Hey folks, it's Blammo. I'm Jeremy. How are we doing? That's a quick intro. I'm glad you're here tuning in this week. I really am. I don't know where you are. Maybe you're in the car, maybe you're on a walk. By the way, I did hear a lot of people like to pot it up when they're at the gym. And I was like, me too. But I won't lie, sometimes I can't be tossing around dumbbells, when someone's talking about how good a shirt fits or how great a record is. I don't know. But I'm so glad you're here. I'm still recovering from Scotland, where I might have gone a little too hard. I got to speak the truth. And I had a little bit too much fun. So I hit the gym last week, and man, I got weak. I couldn't throw anything around. And yes, I take creatine. I take the 5 milligrams. We're good. I'm doing all right. I appreciate it. Someone sent me an email and was like, "Hey, you talk about the gym a lot. Here's your workout." And they wrote out like all this stuff. And they were like, "Yeah, if you can do this, it only takes about like 2.5 hours every day in the gym." And I was like, 2.5 hours? Holy dude, I'm trying to keep this under 45 minutes. I can't do it. But enough about that. This is a very special episode. I'm joined by Mr. Hrishikesh Hirway, whom many of you probably know as the Song Exploder dude. But Hrishikesh is an incredible musician. I've been listening to his record In the Last Hour of Light. It came out not that long ago. But it's so good. So he's on the pod this week, and we dig in. So it gets a little existential. Who would have thought? But man, it's in there. We talk about the strange identity crisis of becoming known as the Song Exploder guy, while still trying to reconnect with himself as a musician and songwriter. We also get into the idea of collaboration, which is, I think for many musicians, it's still not, it's you'll hear. We talk about it, but we talk about writer's block, vintage clothing, obsessive music listening. Hello, my name's Jeremy. And the making of his beautiful new record, In the Last Hour of Light. Oh man, I'm so excited for y'all to dig in. So let's go. I've always been into Song Exploder. It's one of the best podcasts, especially as a person who's obsessed with music like me. Now people want podcasts as video. And we were talking about this before we started recording. Have you had to deal with that from musicians or different people?
Nobody's asking for it in terms of guests or anything like that. But
that's good.
Certainly everybody in the industry around it, they're like, video is the thing to do. You should be doing video. And if you want your show to grow, you should do video. And I have to explain that it just wouldn't work for Song Exploder, which is highly edited. I don't know how many cuts per minute, but like 20, and things are being moved around. It would be frenetic and insane to watch it on video if I were just cutting, some straight video feed the way that I cut the audio.
Yeah, because that show, first off, is like podcast canon. It is.
Oh, thanks.
It's so good. And I will admit, I knew about 1 a.m. radio, didn't know it was you, and then Song Exploder. And then I feel like, and then hearing now, this is what, your fourth album now?
It's I guess if you include all the 1 a.m. radio albums, this would be my 5th album.
Okay.
And it's the first full length just under Hrishikesh Hirway. But yeah, 5th in my life.
Yeah. I've been listening to the record. It's, and we were chatting about this on iMessage earlier, but like, man, the production's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. It's produced by Phil Weinrobe, and he's very good.
Yeah. So, I want to talk a little bit about Song Exploder, but like for me to talk more about your record, can you kind of explain this a little bit? Because I feel like many people just know you as the Song Exploder dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I started making music, in a serious way when I was in college. Started making albums, and I started a record label with my friends and playing shows and touring. And I did all that under the name of the 1 a.m. radio, and then kept doing that for the next 12 years. So, I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast and made LA my home. And I signed to a label out here, and I put out the last 2 records with them. It was a label called Dangerbird.
Yeah. They had Silver Sun too.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I worked with the label as well. I was like the art director there, and I produced a couple albums for other artists on the label. So there was a song by this band Eulogies, and I had Nikki from Silver Sun. We asked her if she would sing it as a duet, and she did.
Oh, so good.
So cool. Yeah, so that was sort of the thing that was going on in my life right before Song Exploder. And then by the fourth album of the One Aim Radio, I just felt like I was kind of stuck in like first gear or second gear, and just couldn't figure out how to get things going in a way that I felt, I looked around me and I saw so many folks that I admired just doing incredibly well and getting to the next level. And my last album, as the One Aim Radio, came out, and I felt like I didn't really get to the next level. And
what would have the next level been?
I don't know. I think, that's a great question. I think it's a question that everybody has to try and answer for themselves of like, what does success actually look like? And I don't know that I had a clear picture, but it was sort of maybe like I'll know it when I see it kind of feeling. And I just felt like I didn't see it. I think there are probably other people who could have looked at what was going on and said, you're doing fine. Like, just keep going.
Oh, yeah.
But in my heart at the time, I was really feeling like a failure and just feeling like I had put so much into it. And now I'm, over a decade into this thing. And is that just, maybe I've reached the peak? Like, and as I go longer, are people going to just care less and less? Like, is there a point of not just a plateau, but hey, that's you had a number of at bats, you took them, and now it's just a matter of like hanging on past the point where anybody cares. That was what it felt like I was looking at, and that was terrifying. And I just didn't know how to keep going in that mode and feel good about it.
Yeah.
And so for the first time in my life around then, I said, let me see what else is out there, like in my brain. What other ideas do I have? And what else would I do if for the first time in my life, I'm not putting all of my energy and all of my time and resources into just my music? What else might be rattling around? Just so I can just think about something else instead of this incredibly depressing thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when Song Exploder started.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense, because I think for me, when I first started, I was like, oh, this is like super legit journalist, and they're just very, very good at Pro Tools, because the concept is perfect for radio. And I honestly was kind of surprised that it hadn't been done before. I mean, there were plenty of people who had done interviews where they talked about recordings, but for listeners, which I'd be shocked if you haven't heard Song Exploder, you have the stems, which are like the individual isolated tracks of many of these songs. I mean, you've done Fleetwood Mac songs, you've done, modern songs, you've done all sorts of stuff. And getting those stems on there and then seeing how an individual writes and builds these songs, I mean, it's mind blowing. But I am curious, as you've been doing it and you did it for so long, and as you still do it, what did this do to your songwriting?
Well, at first, it was a great distract. I feel like there were sort of three phases maybe of my relationship with the show. At first, I was like, oh, okay, I have something I can focus on. This was me trying to, make a day job for myself, basically. I had this idea, and I thought, I think this could be some kind of viable version of a day job, of sort of a more satisfying freelance gig, or something that I could make for myself that uses all of my kind of, my musical knowledge and my ability to work in Pro Tools. And I could make something, that I didn't hear in the world. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't find anybody who would actually want to pay for it or sponsor it or take it on. My original idea was this would be branded content. If I could just find like a brand who wanted it for content. Yeah. But funnily enough, actually back in those days in 2013, similar to now, people were only interested in video. They didn't want audio. They said, well, if you could make a video. And I was like, no, it's about audio. It's about music. And there's going to be these stretches where we're just listening to music. So I was like, but maybe like a headphone company or, something like that. But I had no connections in the world of like brands or marketing or things like that. So I reached out to a few places, and it just never happened. But I still believed in the idea enough that I was like, well, let me just try and see. So I just, did it as a podcast instead of as, quote unquote branded content.
Yeah. And do you remember what was like, Because what you had, Jimmy Tamborello, right? Was
Yes.
one of the earlier episodes from Didn't Tell.
Yeah, he was the first episode. It was the pilot episode. Basically, the last tour that I'd done with the 1 a.m. radio was opening for Jimmy's project Didn't Tell.
Yeah.
We had toured together for several weeks, and we'd known each other in LA. I was a huge fan of his, and I managed to find myself sort of in the same scene with him. And so we would see each other at shows, and sometimes like we DJ'd at stuff together. And so after we had toured together, I felt like we really were legitimate friends. And I asked him if he would let me interview him, just because I thought he's somebody whose process I'm deeply curious about. He's probably the most successful person that I know personally in terms of, having a platinum record.
Yeah, that's true.
And they were getting ready to do like a 10th anniversary reunion tour. So he had all the stems and stuff for the songs up as he was trying to figure out how they were going to do the live show. And we were good enough friends that I felt like I could try this out with him and not feel so self-conscious about the fact that I had never interviewed somebody, that I'm not a journalist in any kind of way. And, so can I fumble my way through this with somebody where I can start and stop and say like, well, maybe it's like this, or, kind of work my way through it with a friend.
Yeah, but you are a musician. And so as I think most musicians, and specifically your songwriter, like have an idea of how we want songs to feel, whether it's your classic sort of A-B format, or verse chorus, double chorus tag. Like there is and it's not like that more applies to pop, but like that's almost like this universal feeling that I feel applies to many of what people realize are like some of their favorite songs. But I feel like you knew what sounded good. And also I think, and you've done this too, whether it's on like, you did one with The National, you've done like Bon Iver, to where like you knew the things that were difficult. And I think being able to also have these conversations with people, and we're like, again, many people they've been listening to Song Exploder for years. I mean, it's been around 12, 14 years or something now.
Mm-hmm.
But like, to me, I'm always the most surprised by hearing some of these musicians not know the answer.
Yeah.
To some of their songs. Be like, I don't know. It just felt good at the time. And you're like, oh, thank God. Like, versus someone being like, well, we had to do that because that's what would fit in that pentatonic scale. Like there was, but I feel like you specifically had a very strong understanding of this because you are a musician.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of what made me want to start the show is that I felt like interviews that I would hear with musicians that I really loved, conducted by some of the great interviewers of the world, just never felt like they connected to my sense of music in a way that where I would listen and I would feel like I was still missing insights, real insight. So I thought, well, I know what it feels like to try and make something like this. It is this combination of unexplainable instinct and very calculated decisions, and sometimes those decisions are super small. And sometimes they are creative, and sometimes they're just about solving a problem, like, oh, the room was too small to have the cymbals be played at the same time as we were recording the drums. So like there are all kinds of things that affect what ends up coming out. And I wanted to hear about all of that because I felt like if you could hear somebody muddling through that, I mean, one of the things that I learned early on was to always include those moments of people being unsure or making a mistake or having an alternate version of the song that nobody heard, because they scrapped it, because it made me feel like, these things that sound so perfect, all have these kind of messy beginnings and origin stories. And like you said, they don't know it's not like it's a straight line from, I have this feeling for a song to here's the song. And I thought that if other people felt that way, including me, then they might feel a little bit better and a little bit more encouraged in whatever their own creative pursuit was.
Yeah. I mean, because you've asked now hundreds of artists to like break down their own songs, but was there something, as for even on this new record, but like, was there something that you started to catch that you're like, oh, I haven't been incorporating this into my songwriting, whether it's a sonic element or even just the comfort of a legendary artist just not knowing?
Yeah. Well, I think a huge thing that came out of it between starting the show and when I got back into making music was the idea of collaboration in a deep way. You know, I'd played in bands, but the 1AM Radio was a solo project, and I'd been so focused on the idea that like it was a solo project. It needed to be my own creation in every possible way. From writing the songs to designing the artwork, you know, like I had to be responsible for everything.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, then somehow I was sort of sullying the creative vision, or it was somehow a failure on my part if I had to turn to other people, you know, and some of those failures I could accept. Well, I don't play trumpet, so somebody's going to have to play trumpet on this trumpet part. But
you're going to write it for them.
But I'm going to write it for them. Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that I kept running into on Song Exploder is all these ways that people had these very meaningful collaborative relationships with people outside of themselves. You know, not just bandmates writing within the unit of the band, but artists talking to producers, artists writing with other writers, and making something and hearing like the real atomic elements of how something changed because of somebody else's ideas. And making something that was not less than what one person could have done on their own, but actually like just different and unique, and something that only exists within the sort of I don't know why I keep talking about chemistry, but like it's like they made a new molecule, you know, that has this particular shape, and this could only exist because they had this bond. Okay, I'm just going to keep going with chemistry.
Yeah. Let it rip.
But that idea that something unique could be created that was truly special, and this song that we're talking about would only exist because of this conversation, this creative conversation that happened between the artist and this other person or these other people, kind of opened up my prejudice around the idea of like the singular auteur. And eventually that's what cracked the writer's block for me. Was I had my own experience where my friend Jenny Owen Youngs, somebody who I'd met through podcasting, asked me to co-write a song with her. And she's somebody who'd worked in LA for a long time as a co-writer. And that was just a world I wasn't a part of until I got to Song Exploder and I was interviewing these people about it.
Yeah.
And writing with her was incredibly liberating. And I also went in being like, well, I don't know. I think this well is dry. I might not have anything left to contribute, but I mean, you asked me, so it's in some ways it's your fault if I can't contribute anything. And that was the first time I'd really tried in earnest to write a song in like 6 or 7 years. And we did write something, and it felt so good. And it felt like I had found through working with Jenny, like this like true part of myself that I had abandoned and felt, you know, I'd been depressed by making Song Exploder at that point, you know, for several years, and feeling like that initial feeling of like, oh, my stuff isn't that good. You know, I need to maybe stop. I'm never going to get to the next level. And then spending so much of my time talking to people who had reached the next level and many, many, many levels beyond that, and being like, well, they've got something that I don't have, clearly, because this is their success and I never reached that.
Yeah. So, I mean,
yeah,
I feel like that for me, and maybe it's because I'm extremely hard on myself, which I'm gathering it sounds you're a bit similar. Like the more I'm around people who are just brilliant artists, whether they're people in business or music or fashion or whatever, I love it because I feel inspired by them. But often when I leave the room, especially in the position of like interviewing them, in which, you know, Song Exploder is not just, oh, then you did this and then you did this. Like there is a back and forth that you do with these artists, whether you've challenged them on their own decisions. And to be that interviewer, when you shut the mic off and then you pick up your own guitar later, I imagine that's got to be a tiny bit of almost like salt on an open wound where you're like, well, I can't fucking write this. Like
yeah.
And then to know that they did it on accident for some of these people,
right?
Where you're just like, you're not even trying.
Yeah, it definitely made things. I guess I never finished answering your question. I said I had these three phases, right?
You're fine.
Well, so the first phase was, here's this exciting thing that I can work on and focus my energy on. Then the second phase was this sort of era of feeling like even more of a failure, because I was speaking to these other artists who were so successful, and that felt like it proved my own failure. But also, the show started to become more popular than my music had ever been.
Yeah, exactly.
And that made it feel like even more like I ought not to be making music, that I had gotten it wrong. And the idea of me trying to exist in that kind of way was a mistake. That actually, like, if people have a purpose, then maybe my purpose was to serve other artists and their stories, as opposed to try and be one myself. And I was just kidding myself up until that point. So that was the long, brutal middle. But now I feel like I'm in a third chapter where, because of these things that I've learned, like learning about co-writing. I mean, not learning about it like as a fact, but learning about it in this deep way about what it actually results in. And then meeting Jenny, and then sort of going on this journey to try and like write with other people and see what happens. Like, eventually I'm writing songs on my own as well, and finding new people to collaborate. And sometimes, I'd write to people who I was like, I'm just a fan of your music, and, can I send you some of my stuff and see if you might be interested in writing with me? The only reason why they would even respond in the first place or listen to the music might be because they were like, oh, sure, I'll check it out. I love the podcast, so let me see, Yeah. And so now I have to recognize like how grateful I am for having had this other thing in the middle, because as much as it was sort of an answer for what I do with myself when I couldn't do music. And then eventually it was the way that I was able to unlock something. Like it took many, many years for the lessons that I was sort of pulling out of people to actually hit me, and start writing music again. But I don't think I would have ever gotten there if it weren't for the podcast.
Wait, hold on a second. I am in the middle of auctioning a watch of mine off on Bezel. Just a few more minutes left. Look, yes, your favorite site to buy and sell luxury timepieces of all the heavy hitters from Rolex and Lange and Cartier. I could go on and on and on. They also let you auction your own watch on their incredibly safe and secure marketplace. After the auction ends, I'm just going to ship my watch to them with the prepaid label they gave me, and boom, your boy's going to get some money in his account to, in my case, buy another watch. But I'm not here to discuss that part. I am trying to tell you why I use Bezel to buy and sell and now auction all my favorite watches. Check it out. Finish the pod first, but hey, look, I get it if you want to hit that pause button. So visit getbezel.com and get nuts with your next favorite timepiece. That's getbezel.com. Shop the nearly 25,000 luxury watches on there, and rest assured your purchases are authenticated by Bezel's team of experts. And psst, if there's something on there you're not seeing, you want that ultra rare Lange or that CP Cartier, just hit up their concierge and they will source it for you. They're real people, and they'll talk to you and they'll find that dream watch for you. So visit getbezel.com. That's getbezel.com. All right, back to the show. Yeah, and also, I think we're probably around the same age, but I think it's more of a generational thing that we experience, into which there is no such thing as like a multi-career or a multi-dimensional way, or, multifaceted way to make a living. I think many of us feel like you do the traditional thing where you go to school, you study the thing, then you start the job, and then that is your career, and then you retire and you have a life of leisure of whatever that is, and then you walk on. But because I wrestle with that a lot too, in the sense that, okay, well, I make a living doing this, I also make a little bit doing this, I make doing this, and so like, what am I?
Right.
I want to say that I'm a singular, I am a blank.
Yeah.
And that defines who I am, versus like, well, yeah, I play music, I also do this, where it's almost like there's this hidden shame around who we define ourselves or what we define ourselves as, because everyone else that we're around is like, I'm a doctor, I'm a software developer, I'm this one title, and that defines me. And it's only been, I do some work with some schools in which a lot of these, younger students are like, well, I do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So there's not just one thing you're hitching your, and they're like, no. I'm like, okay, yeah, I think, but I seriously wrestle with that. And I'm just curious, like, yeah, because Song Exploder isn't going away, right? I mean, you still do your own music, and both of these things can coexist. And if anything, lift each other up.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's what my life can look like from here on, is to be able to say that I do both and feel, for a while I felt like I would say like, oh yeah, I'm a musician, but it was sort of theoretical. Like I was like, the last time I played a show was 5 years ago, and I haven't put out a record. It was like,
sure.
How much do I get to claim saying that I'm a musician or a songwriter when I haven't actually done that? Even if I spent most of my adult life doing that, now at a certain point, I feel like there's a statute of limitations where you can't claim that anymore. But yeah, I'd love to be able to say that I do both. I think it's interesting too, because when people learn about your work in one area, it's easy to sort of just seal up the walls and say, oh, okay, and that's how I know you, and that's who you are. That is I have completed the picture of your identity.
Yes.
Based on this one piece of information that I have.
Yeah.
For anybody who's like, oh, Jeremy from Blammo, he is the guy. Even the fact that you're like, I care about things more than just fashion, but for some folks, they're like, Jeremy, fashion, Blammo, end of sentence, end of chapter, end of book.
Yeah.
So similarly, I think one of the things that's been tricky is trying to remind myself that I still have a legitimate claim to trying to make music, even if other people don't see me that way. That doesn't diminish the actual pursuit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is more important than ever, because especially now, many people just view themselves as what is making them the most money or whatever that looks like. And I feel like it's such a disservice to people who want to also explore things that they're more passionate about, because you will not know unless you continue to do that. And I mean, obviously from this record, dude, the record's really, really good. And
thank you.
I say that as just, I'm such a music snob, and I don't mean to be, but I think I grew up in a studio. I've I did music stuff on my own. I worked as an engineer. So I feel like my opinion on these things, for me, I've held more weight than anything else, solely because you also just understand like what good songs are. And the opening of the record, I mean, it's so good. But like we talked a bit about collaboration and stuff. How'd you get Sam from Iron and Wine on the show? Like it's Stray Dogs is like a brilliant song. It's
Thank
a brilliant song.
Thanks. Yeah, I can't believe that actually happened.
Was that a cold email?
No, not exactly. Okay. It was a series of events that I feel it's wild that it all kind of lined up in this way, in a way that I feel about a lot of things in my life that I'm most excited about. Then you look back and you're like, how did that happen? How did this chain of events actually work out this way? But I had been asked to do a live song exploder in Wimberley, Texas, at this beautiful studio called Blue Rock Artist Ranch and Studio. It's it's on this beautiful piece of property about 45 minutes outside of Austin. They wanted to do a fundraiser for PRX, which is the parent, sort of organization that is the home of Radiotopia, which is sort of the indie podcast collective that Song Exploder is part of. It's like all the podcasts are independently owned by their creators, but we share resources. It's sort of like a little collective.
Yeah, Avery's on it too.
Avery's on it as well, exactly.
Yeah.
And PRX is sort of like the bigger parent organization. They're a nonprofit, and so they rely on donors and things like that. And the folks who own Blue Rock said they wanted to organize a fundraiser and sort of galvanize their community to support PRX. And the idea was maybe they could host a song exploder at that studio. And so they asked, and I love all the folks at PRX, and I said, okay, I'm down to do that, but if I'm going to do a live song exploder, which I don't do very often, I want to make sure it's with an artist that I would normally still be as excited to do a regular episode with. So I don't know if that,
very
that's
diplomatic
hard.
way of saying, don't give me a whack artist I'm not into.
I just didn't want, I was like, that's a non-starter if that's going to be the case, so let's see if we can make something work. And, we'd sort of settled on a range of dates, but it's in this place in outside of Austin. I found, while looking, I found Iron and Wine had a set of tour dates where there was a big break after a show in Texas. There were 2 shows in Texas and then nothing for like a week or something. And Iron and Wine had never been on the show. This is another thing, is I don't repeat guests. And so there are so many people who I love, but I start crossing them off the list and I can't go back to them.
You got to repeat guests. Well, whatever. That's another. Go ahead, continue your story. I'm sorry.
So the pool, so it's not people. There are more new artists every week than there are episodes coming out. So the pool is getting bigger rather than smaller, but still,
right.
I had my criteria. And so anyway, it turned out that Iron and Wine was going to be in the area. And so we reached out and I said, like, would you want to do this? It's more than just be a guest on the podcast. It's like, come to this place that you weren't planning to go to, spend the whole day, getting there and then doing this. But he agreed. And it was my first time meeting him. This was in 2022. And because we got to the venue, or, we got to the studio and had a little bit of time, we got to talk in a little, maybe more than I normally would with a guest. Usually somebody comes over and we have a little bit of like a preamble and chat and get to know you before the mics start rolling. But here it was like, we're going to have lunch and, we're going to do a sound check and all this stuff. Yeah. And so we got to talk a lot more than usual. And Iron and Wine is a huge artist for me. I mean, a huge, huge influence on me.
Yeah.
And I got to tell him a few stories. I got to tell him about going to see him live in 2003 and how I gave a copy of the first 1AM radio CD to someone at the merch table.
Oh my God.
Just to be like, well, I also make music and I love it. And
was this Endless Number Days era, or was this?
Yes, it was right after Endless Number Days had come out. And
flawless album.
Yeah. I was so excited to see him and see it was a full band. And and then I told him about how I had also played an Iron and Wine song for my mom. I didn't usually play too much. My mom would sometimes hear my music, in the car. And she would have opinions about things that she liked or she didn't, and she'd be like, well, let's listen to that. Let's listen to that one song. Like she liked, she would be like, we can listen to the I'm Not Here song, meaning exit music for a film by Radiohead.
Yeah.
Like she had good taste, but sort of a narrow parameters of what kind of stuff that I liked that she also liked. So I had gotten so into The Creek Drank the Cradle in 2002 and 2003. And when she came to visit one time, I played a song for her. I was like, I think you might like this one. And I played her this song, Upward Over the Mountain, which is about like a son singing to his mother.
Mother, don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah. And she started crying listening to it. And I was like, what is happening? My mom never had that kind of reaction especially to like songs in English, like American songs. It just was unusual, but it was a powerful moment for me. And I got to share that with Sam. And I think he was really touched. And then we did the interview and it was so nice. We just it was really nice. And the thing that happened that doesn't often happen is that I left and I felt like maybe we had become friends and we exchanged numbers and in the days and weeks afterwards, we would text every now and then. We talked about poets that we loved and poems, and Sam would occasionally send me like a poem that he was enjoying. Have you read this one? Do you know this one? And I would do the same. And so it was really nice and just such an exciting moment for me to become even just that in that small way friends with someone who I admired for at that point 2 decades.
Yeah.
So the next thing that happened was I ran into the folks from Blue Rock again here in LA for an event around PRX. And we were talking and they told me how they sometimes host. I think I might have been talking about this sort of like balance between making Song Exploder and trying to be a songwriter and artist. And it's a couple who owns the place. And Dodie, who was there at the event, was telling me about how her husband, who it's his studio. He's a musician and a songwriter and a producer. She was saying that he similarly feels sometimes caught between the identity of being a producer and studio owner and helping artists sort of realize their vision. and his own artistry, and that they host sort of like a songwriting retreat, week-long residency.
Oh, that's awesome.
That there are 4 songwriters sort of who participate, and one of them is Billy, her husband, because it's a way for him to sort of actively turn off the studio owner part of himself and reconnect with the songwriting part of himself. And as she was saying that, I was like, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I was like, is that something that, like, could I apply for that? And she said, yeah, we have applications, go ahead. So I applied for it, and I got in to go. So this was now like the following year in 2023. I was going to go back to that place and spend a week just trying to write songs. And that was very exciting, but also daunting, because I wanted to make the absolute most of this rare gift of an opportunity. So I started to fret about, what's going to happen if I run out of ideas, if I go through my entire notebook.
That's
I'm just going to be
self-doubt.
Yeah. And I'm going to squander this beautiful week. So I started thinking, okay, what if I got like homework, because I think part of the problem for me in my life has been approaching music like it's school, and trying to get an A on things all the time. But that part of me does exist. And so I was like, well, maybe I could get homework assignments, maybe I could ask people for some kind of prompt or something like that. And so I turned to a few people and said, I'm going to go to this place. Like, do you have a prompt for me? Is there something that I could turn to if I run out of my own ideas? And one of the people I asked was Sam, because I was like, I'm going back to the place where we first met, and I have this purpose, and by chance, do you have any kind of songwriting prompts? Because of our conversations about poetry and stuff like that, I just felt like he was somebody I felt like we were in a comfortable enough place where I could just ask him, like, it could be anything, right? You're just like, pluck an idea out or something that could send me thinking.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I expected to get in return, but he sent me 3 prompts. He texted me 3 prompts, and one of them was describe a street you used to live on from the point of view of a stray dog. And the other 2 were great too, but that first one just sparked something immediately. Something about just all of that made me think of the first time that I had seen stray dogs, which was in India, on the street. Not a street that I grew up on, but a street that my cousins lived on. My grandfather and his brothers in India all kind of had houses basically on the same street in this small town. And I went to visit when I was 8, and it was my first time going to India, and it was my first experience of a lot of things. And there were these stray dogs, and I remember being kind of fascinated by them, and initially a little scared, and then realizing that they didn't care about me or anybody. They were just doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And I started to think about that. And so, like, I think minutes after he sent that, I kind of like walked around, I picked up the guitar, and I started writing the song. And I ended up writing the entire song before I even left for the trip for Texas.
You went full Dolly Parton. You just knocked that shit out.
Yeah. And so it was great in some ways, because it was such a rich prompt that I was able to respond to it fully. In other ways, it was like, well, that doesn't help me now when I get there. I've already got this song done.
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess it counts as one of the songs I wrote for the residency, but it was before I got there. And so then later, when it came time to actually record the song, I think for me, living in Song Exploder for so long, the stories around how songs are made have been so important. They've been the DNA of the thing that I've been working on. And so I sometimes think about, not just what the story is of the song, but what is the story around the song. And I thought, well, Sam is responsible for that prompt that sent me down this path. Wouldn't it be cool if that form of collaboration were codified in some way by having him sing on it too? I mean, of course, also, wouldn't that be like such a dream?
Yeah.
One of my heroes and one of my inspirations to be singing next to me. And so I asked him, and he said yes.
Wow. He's not on a ton of other records. Like,
no,
and this is not any shade to him, but I don't see Sam Beam like pop up in a lot of other people's stuff, and so, and your voice is two beautiful compliments to each other, you know, very kind of like this wonderful sort of like hushed dulcet. I mean, it's yeah, because I put the record on and I was like, holy shit, you know, I mean, because it's just so beautiful. And I'm so like, I'm on a lot of label press lists and a lot of different things. And I get sent a lot of stuff. And most of the time it feels like now, and I got to be careful with how I say this, feels like now some of these newer artists, the music is more of a press hit than the music is more of like a full personal artistic expression. Do you know what I mean? And I think that I don't apply that to everyone, but I feel like I'll put something on and you're like, well, what are you saying in this song? Or what are you saying on this album? And I'm like, I don't feel like there's any sort of empathetic connection. Sonically, it just feels like you recorded half of it on your phone. And I do believe that it's beautiful that you can use all these different tools to make music, you know, and I have to hide my own elitism in communicating this. I really do. But like you can tell that it's like if someone made a sketch and they sketched it on a napkin. There's a place and time for that. But if you go to the art show, you want to see the paint, you want to see the canvas, and it's just great to, you know, to hear these songs that are also recorded so well and, you know, are so beautifully written. It's cool, and I love that. That's how Sam like got on.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for saying that. I really, really appreciate it. And Phil is an incredible producer, both in terms of his skills as an engineer and in terms of his vision, having a vision. I'd never, you know, done that. I'd always produced all my stuff on my own and kind of recorded everything myself. And that was part of the auteur idea, right? Like I was like, I'm going to be the producer and and so I'll just record everything and arrange everything. But I think my fear about recording in the way that he likes to record, you know, where everything is live and you do, you know, a couple of takes, 3, maybe 4 takes at the most before you move on.
Wow. That's very little for listeners.
It's very, very few. Yeah. I mean, I was used to doing a dozen takes of just, you know, the foundational guitar part, just the first, you know, like layer of something. I'd do it 12 times or something, you know, until felt like I'd really nailed it or I could edit something together. Yeah. This idea of like no editing and just, you know, you just capture a moment. I was worried that it would feel more like a napkin, like the sketch. Yeah. Like you're saying that not because of him, but because of me, that like I wouldn't be able to inhabit it and fully enough in a way that felt like fully real. Like I thought that the way that you get from the napkin drawing to the full piece of art is through iteration and polishing and adding and, you know, revising. And if you only put 3 hours of recording time into a song instead of 300 hours, that just meant you were failing the assignment because you weren't trying hard enough.
Well, I was going to say, jump back to the fact that you wrote that song in one sitting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it hits, but and then it's like, okay, this is great. Let's make sure we record it well. Let's make sure we honor the work that we're trying to do. And I don't think you need a, you know, multi-million-dollar studio to record stuff well, but there's just like, I mean, some good mics. I don't know if you put it on tape or not.
We didn't put it on tape. It was going into Pro Tools, but we were in Phil's basement. He lived in a sort of row house, you know, in Bed-Stuy, and the basement of it was it was supposed to be just a studio for mixing. It wasn't supposed to be for tracking.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite small. And we set up just, you know, kind of to one side of his consoles. It's like a really, really narrow, long room. And then his desk was in the middle. And to his right, halfway through, you know, that was where all of us were. We could reach out and touch each other. That's how close we were set up. And that's a full drum kit, bass, 2 guitars, piano, and then someone else playing, you know, usually synths or something like that. But we were all there, and you know, and we didn't wear headphones. We didn't. No headphones, no click track, just listening to each other. Also, none of the musicians had heard the songs before we started recording.
No.
Yeah, and they wouldn't. I was like, I have all these demos. He's like, yeah. Phil said, don't. I was like, should I send them to, you know, to everybody who's going to play on the record so they can learn the parts? And he's like, no. And in fact, don't listen to them. Stop listening to them. And I'm going to stop listening to them because I want.
So you're way out of your comfort zone now.
Way out. Yeah, I mean, it's gone. And so he was like, come into the studio and show us the song, just play it, and sing it for us on guitar or piano. And then we'll all learn it, and then we'll play it and we'll record it. So those 3 hours include the band learning the song, all of us arranging it, practicing it maybe one time, and then recording it, and really like just leaning into the idea of like the instinct, and it is really just a recording of everybody in one room. There's no isolation. No amps are like in a separate room or anything like that. It's
going to be tough to be on Song Exploder with your stems.
It's impossible. You can't do it. Yeah. Phil actually had been on Song Exploder with Adrienne Lenker.
Oh yeah.
Another person who he records with and produces, they co-produce, and this is a way of working that they both really, really believe in. And I got to interrogate them about it and why they think it's good and why I had to go through it. But they didn't have stems. So this is one of the few episodes in the show's history where that's the case. And the way we were able to do it is because they had recorded basically every single time they played it. It was a little different. It was like, oh, let's try it with this person trying this instrument. Let's try it, a little faster. Let's try it slower. So on that episode alone, instead of stems, we listened to, I think, 6 different takes of the song.
Oh, so good.
And I can focus a little bit, because there's the mic that's pointed at the guitar, but there are vocals and violin and everything's happening in that mic, but you can get a little bit more. So you can sort of, it's like a spotlight, but it's not like it's total darkness everywhere else the way that I was used to.
Yeah. Were there any songwriting elements or ideas that you did on this record that you had picked up from doing Song Exploder?
Well, certainly just that baseline idea of like writing with other people. That was huge. And I think the other part that was really fundamental that came out of Song Exploder was wanting to make music that was incredibly personal, that was really, really meaningful to me, because that is always the thing that I'm looking for on the show. Not every song connects as deeply with the artist as some do. And I always viewed the podcast as a way to get a little miniature biography of the artist through the lens of the song. So let's find the song that does that for you. That's what feels meaningful. And the episodes that have meant the most to me have been the ones where I feel like the artist really does reveal something about themselves in it. And you feel like you really learn something and get to know them better, not just at a level of like, oh, this is my process, but also like, this is who I am and this is how I see the world. So with that kind of in the background, I think the only kinds of songs that I wanted to make were ones that felt that way to me, as opposed to like one or two or something like that. Like, oh, for this one, I'm going to really dig deep. It was like, no, that was the case for every single one of them. I was like, I want to plumb the depths of my memories and my life. And, being at the age where I am and the stage of life that I am, I found that was easy to do because that's, the things that I'd experienced made me want to process those and write about those and share those feelings in whatever way I could anyway.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I mean, I think it's funny too, because like there are so many songs that you're like, when Paul McCartney wrote, Her Majesty, it's like, that was a warm up. That was a ditty. That was not plumbing the soul, Yeah. And sometimes you're like, yeah, but I've heard it so many times and it means this or.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. I feel like that collaboration with the listener, where the song ends from you and it begins a new experience for them. That's awesome. But I knew that before I handed it off, I wanted to have as personally meaningful of an experience with it on my own.
Can you give an example of what would make something personal? Like what does a song need to have for you to believe it?
As a listener or as an artist?
For you being okay to push it forward.
I think the starting place for all of these songs, like just the original seed of the song had to come from not like an abstract idea or trying to tell like a musical version of a story that I saw in a movie or something like that. It had to all come from something that I had thought or felt or experienced. And then usually I would write something down about that. And then I would, return to it every now and then and be like, is there something here? Is there something that I want to talk about? Like, for example, there's a song on the record called Your Voice, that's about my mom. And I co-wrote that with my friend Ken Pomeroy. But that was originally just a phrase that I had written down as I was thinking about my mom and thinking about how she only exists in memory, and my memories are just by nature getting worse as time goes on.
When did your mom pass?
She passed in November 2020. And so this was at the time when we were writing it, it had been about 4 years. And and my mom was sort of the person that she's the parent I'm more like. I look like her, and personality wise, I'm more similar to her. And so I had written down, like in my notes app, I had written down, what of you still lives in me? What part of you will die along with me? All the things that we'd seen together, what happens when I'm gone? Like just sort of like they talk about the idea that like, oh, people live on in us. And I'm like, well, maybe, to some extent, but like what version, and like, how does that get reduced by time and your own inability to remember them? And then what happens when I'm gone? Then like now all of these stories, it's like a fading out. Mm. And so that was something that I pondered and felt really deeply, and I didn't know what I was going to do with that. But then when I met Ken, we decided we were going to try writing together. I said, well, I said, here's an idea I'm wrestling with. Here's something that, is really meaningful to me. I don't know if there's a song in here exactly, but do you feel anything with this? And she had not lost her mother, but she has her own complicated relationship, and those words meant something to her. And she said, yeah, let's try and do something with that. And so that's how that song got made.
In terms of holding on to memories, and like you had said something along the lines of like, worry that you're going to lose them. Mm-hmm. I lost my dad in the spring of 24.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. He was in a band, and he was he was a musician, and he played with, Dan Peake of America, and was like a legit touring musician and songwriter, and wrote all this music and had all these records. And there are things and stories I have told about my dad, and I had told a story, and it was just like an absent, silly story. And I told it in front of my mom. One of the times she was at the house, I was talking to my kids about it. Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, yeah, that never happened. And I was like, excuse me? And I realized through my grief and love and all these things, an idea of who this person is I was essentially making up stories about them that were reflective of who they were, mm-hmm. but were not exactly true. Right. And I swear to you, if I would have been in front of a judge and jury, I would have swore to everything that it was true. Yeah. And I was like, how in the fuck am I making up stories about my dad? Yeah. And, I shared this with my partner, and she was like, well, you should just write these things down. And so I'm curious, have you yourself tried to write down memories of your mom? Not because you're trying to like fix anything or even process your grief, but to just like make sure that you're getting it right. So 10 years down the road, if you do want to kind of go down memory lane, you're like, oh yeah, this is what happened. Yeah. Gosh, I haven't like chronicled things in that way. It's funny. My mom, one of her roles in our family and in her greater family was sort of the keeper of the lore. She was the person who was like, this is what happened. And and her siblings, when I'd be around them, they'd be like, oh, tell that story. Remember how that, and they'd turn to her because she was a great storyteller and because she remembered that stuff. And it was like there was sort of an oral tradition. So sometimes my sister and I will, do our version of that. Like, remember when this happened? Remember when that happened? But I haven't thought about it, recording it in a more formal way outside of, I guess, the most formal way would be like in these handful of songs. Yeah, it's definitely strange on how I think when you lose a parent, like how you reevaluate the relationship with them, what you choose to forgive, what you choose to maybe hold against them. Where it's like, I listen to some of my dad's music now, and I started like rewriting it, or I'm like, he really played the piano in this weird, like a whipping way that was like just doesn't make sense. And then I like am now finding myself listening to these other songwriters and people that he really admired. And, you know, I'm curious, are there things that you do with your own music outside of this song too, where it's like, oh, this is kind of a nice way that like I'm sure they'd be into it, you know, or like she loved, you know, exit music. Do you put it on? You just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Only if that exists, it's only with my mom. My dad just doesn't really get what I do, or he's not really a music guy at all. But I do think that, you know, I've internalized this feeling of wanting their approval.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never get it from my dad in the way that I want. I mean, he will always say, good job, but it doesn't come from a place of understanding. So it doesn't really mean as much. You know, it doesn't land in the same way because he'll be like, okay, good job. I'm like, but you don't know why it's good or if it's good or if it's bad. And, you know, like you just can't relate to it at that level. And he's just not deeply opinionated in that way. My mom was very opinionated, very judgmental, and very, you know, she loved things that she loved and she knew what she didn't like as well.
Oh, yeah. Was she giving you notes and you're like, no, that's not how I want it to go. You're wrong.
She didn't so much say, she wouldn't say like, I don't like this or anything like that. But she had songs, there were songs of mine that I knew she liked, you know, that were her favorites. And songs by other folks that I knew that she loved. And I probably at some subconscious level am responding to that bit of feedback that I've gotten, you know, in the years when she was alive by things that she said she liked. So yeah, I mean, the fact, like just the fact that Iron and Wine song moved her to tears that one time, and what that song was, and that idea of this, you know, a son singing to their mother, those lyrics are so poignant, and that song is so beautiful that I know from that day forward, there was some part of me that was like, yeah, this is the good stuff. I thought it was good, which is why I played it for my mom. And she has validated something deeply, like more deeply than I expected. And so I'm sure some part of me was tilting in that direction ever since then. And certainly when I was making this album, even if she couldn't hear it.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so cool. Yeah, I still love to just sit and listen to records. You know, what are some other things that you've been listening to now? And like, or what's a record that you've listened to recently, front to back?
I just got a new CD player.
Oh,
so that I can listen to my CDs again. You know, I got like so I only wanted a single disc thing.
Wise.
I didn't, you know, and it's actually hard. Everybody, if you try and look on secondhand listings, they're all like 5 disc changers and things like that, which I really didn't need. And also, I made this shelf in my house specifically for my LPs and my CDs and a CD player, and I made it at LP depth. And
yes.
And without thinking so much about like what are the dimensions of CD players, you know, I was like, yeah, I have a record player that fits within that 14-inch depth, so it'll be fine. But all these, 5 disc changers, they're much deeper. Anyway, so I had to find something that I wanted, a single disc player, and I also wanted something that could fit within this shelf. I ended up finding on Etsy it's like a Harman Kardon CD player component player that somebody was selling.
You found the CD player on Etsy? I didn't even know Etsy has electronics.
Neither did I. But yeah, I found it because it was like, oh, eBay, I don't like bidding on stuff. I was looking on Facebook Marketplace for a long time. But then eventually I was just like, I think I like widened the search and found someone on Etsy who was, selling used stereo component stuff. And so I just got that last week. It was very exciting to like feel like this music shelf idea that project I'd been working on finally was complete. And so I could listen to my CDs again. You know, things, of course, a lot of those CDs are available on streaming, but some of them are not. Or just like my experience of listening to them on CD, that's just how I feel like they should be heard, you know? Anyway, so the album, the first CD that I put on and listened to front to back was this album by João Gilberto, called Voz y Violão.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That's David Longstreth actually is a huge fan of him.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's a record from later in his life that I really love. I mean, like, people know "Girl from Ipanema," of course, that is incredibly famous and stuff. And so I think the version of his voice that is famous is him as a young man, and and it's such a sweet voice that he has. It's kind of like a very sweet tenor. But I love this album, which came out, I think, when I was in college or something like that. Because it is just a document of time, because he is, 40 years older, 45 years older than he was when "Girl from Ipanema" was recorded, and all that Stan Getz stuff was recorded. And I'd been a fan of his since high school, and I spent years listening to him. And then this like new CD came out, and he sounds his age. His voice is like lower. He's no longer a tenor. He's a baritone, and it has this kind of, gravel to it. That I think, because I know his young voice so well, always felt really remarkable. It's sort of like those Johnny Cash recordings, the American recordings, where you're like, oh yeah, this is a man. This is not just about the songs. This is a portrait of a person at a certain stage in their life.
I love that stuff. Like, I don't know if you think about this now, where, Paul McCartney has a new album coming out.
Yes.
And there's a lot of folks I'm in too many message boards about audio crap who are like, snooze. And it's like, seriously? Don't you want to see how a Beatle evolved and got to where they are now?
Yeah.
And I mean, look, that's separate from Wings and his own masterpieces that he's done solo. But like, I do want to hear these things. And I don't mind that his voice is a little bit more frail because he's in his 80s. Like, that is okay. Yeah. I don't, roll my eyes at, I don't know, like a movie because the director's older. Like,
right.
These people didn't peak. And so I do love listening to later, like, I don't know if you were ever a Bill Fay fan, but everyone got really into Bill Fay like much later in his life from, probably it was from Light in the Attic stuff. But some of the later recordings where his voice is just like kind of crackly, and it's just beautiful. But yeah, that's cool that you listen to that record.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was both, nostalgic for me to go back to a CD that I'd gotten 20 something years ago, 20, maybe more, almost 30 years ago. I mean, my God, just to have an object from my life that's old, so old, and still, be able to interact with it. That was meaningful. But I think at this point in my life, especially, I already loved it when I first heard it for all these reasons, but now those reasons hit harder because I am that much older.
Right. Yeah. Do you ever listen to any of the older music that you did and you?
No, I try and stay away from that.
Me too.
Something came, there was some reason I heard something from like early 1 a.m. radio days, and yeah, my voice is higher, and it was uncomfortable. I mean, it was interesting, but not so interesting that I could hang out there at all.
Yeah, I get that. I loathe anything I've ever played, or whether it was 10 minutes ago. I'm just like, nope.
Yes. Okay. So you and I are, cut from the same cloth. The same self-judgmental cloth.
Well, but you are a legit musician, and I just made like EPs and the aughts. Like, just saying.
No, I mean, really, the fact that it means a lot to me that you would say that, and that anybody would even potentially see that, because I think for sure there's still a huge part of me that despite what I said about I've got to do this for myself and I've got to make it meaningful for myself, and that's the most important thing, there is still an enormous part of me that is worried that people will say, why would I listen to this? This guy is not a real musician. His job is talking to musicians I love. There's no way I would ever consider him to be among them, because, that this person has fit into the slot of, if I'm lucky enough already to have them care about anything that I do, they might be like, oh yeah, I listen to this guy because he talked to all the people who worked on The West Wing, and that's my favorite TV show. But the idea of then being like, oh, and now let me see if I might also like his music, feels like a tremendous leap. And so I really appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure was all mine. I mean, look, there's there's always that dude or that person, whatever, you know. But I do think you have a peculiar advantage in a good way because the music's good. Like, I mean, I had the music on in the house the other day and my partner was like, oh my God, who is this? You know, and and I told her and she was like, oh, is that the dude from Song Exploder? I'm like, well, yeah, but you know, well, I'm actually gonna do a pod, and we actually, you know, and I was like, dude, you got a few minutes? Let me just. But
thank you.
Yeah,
let me know how much I have to Venmo you. For
no. But I did get the wax. So, well, I mean, I haven't gotten it yet. But if you are a fan of music and you're listening to this and you're like, oh, this is so cool, I'm just gonna add the pre-release to my Spotify or Apple Music. That's the equivalent of like, I don't know, like touching a fabric at a clothing store if we're going to make it fashion. But to really own it and to really, really enjoy it, I always recommend that you either one, buy it on Bandcamp on Friday or buy the wax, like buy the vinyl. Like even if you don't have a record player, because one, it'll force you to get a record player because listening to a record is just cool as fuck. And when you listen to records, you don't get I wouldn't say luxury, but you don't get the shortcut of skipping things. You're forced to sit and experience the tracks and usually do it from start to finish, from A to B. And you get this beautiful big ass thing of cardboard and there's pictures and there's words on it and you can read the words. And it's just like, I was explaining this to a friend of mine and he was talking about, because like I talk about like there's a chair over there and I will sit and listen to records and whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, Kirkland, I totally get it. Cause like I was sitting there and it's like, I didn't want to get up, you know? And then I opened it and I'm reading lyrics. He's like, it's like a totally different way to listen to music. I was like, it's not different. This is what people did ages ago. Yeah. But I do say this to everyone. I do believe this is how you should really listen to music if you like it. You know, if you care and you want to, you know, but otherwise, look, if it's some, I don't know, top 40 song and you just want to have it when you go to the gym, fine.
And I will just to counter that, if you just want to have this record on as you go to the gym, I am fully supported. I fully support any way in which anybody wants to interact with this music at all. Even just, you know, the approximate version of your attention is very appreciated by me. That's how I feel. I'm like, oh my gosh, you spent 5 seconds listening. Great. Yeah,
it is hard to get people's attention, but I think this is good. Are there some brands or things that you've been into lately? I mean, you have a very, very casual, chic California style.
Oh, thank you.
These days. Yeah.
Well, you know, my closest relationship to fashion comes from the fact that my wife is a fashion designer and she works from home. Yeah. She is the designer for a brand called Grover Rad. That's very, very cool. And you can't see my pants right now, but I'm actually wearing some of their pants because they don't make men's stuff, but they did have a pair. They have a pair of jeans, like a sort of a shape that's based on 501s. And she found a pair that were actually in my size. And she's like, did you want to try these? I was like, yeah, I want to try them. And then I put them on and they fit like 501s and they're just so cool.
Oh, wow. Those are sick.
They're like screen printed. They do a lot of
in LA too.
Yeah, they do everything made here. And it's they do these crazy prints at huge scales. And so I get to see all that, which is very cool, and also just sort of be exposed to her taste and what she's taking in, and she's definitely the biggest influence and advocate for style in my life.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many new brands right now. The same way, like there's a gajillion new artists a day. Like I feel like there's a new fashion brand a day.
Yeah,
I will say it's incredibly hard to be a new clothing brand.
Yeah.
You know, especially when, I mean, this looks great. I'm like, how have I never heard of this? I mean, yes, it's women's wear, but also I'm not in the camp that like, I get it. You'll have women's wear. I'm air quoting now because to complement the range of physiques from women and stuff. But I mean, shit, I've worn women's pants.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same. A leg's a leg.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they're using the 501 as the shape anyway, it's like, okay.
Yeah. It's a classic straight cut. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and it's fun, like to get to have someone who's doing their own creative pursuit right next to me, you know, and we will sort of share
Commiserate.
things. Yeah, I've got my album coming out, and they just had their new collection drop yesterday, and
wow.
And so they have their own version of like, oh, how's it going to do? Are people going to like it? And it's really cool. And I just think, and it's nice because she's worked at a lot of corporate places in the past as a designer, but this is definitely the best job and like most creative kind of thing that she's done. And it's really nice to see. And also just like every time I look at it, I'm just like, man, that is cool. It's so cool.
It's very beautiful. Yeah. You haven't announced like a formal tour of like performing on this record, but do you have like, these are my stage clothes?
Yeah. Well, I have 9 album release shows that are coming up. The first one's next week, and they're sort of like they're kind of like this, where the first part of it is I'm going to be in conversation with somebody about the album, and then the second half of it, I'm going to be playing with a full band.
Yeah. Oh, sick. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. We have rehearsal tomorrow, and we leave for our first show, which is in Austin on Tuesday.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So what's the stage clothes there then?
Stage clothes. We were actually just texting about it yesterday. I was because we're not like an organic band. It's not like, oh, we've been playing together for years and we grew up together and we all share taste. They're folks that I've only met recently, and they're all incredible players. But I was like, well, how does it feel like it's just one thing?
You doing uniform?
We're not doing a uniform. Or I guess what I mean is not feeling like just an assemblage of disparate parts. And so I was like, maybe we could just like establish some parameters. And so I was like, it should feel like how did you put it? California
chic.
California chic. Yeah. I guess maybe I was like, could it be something like that, where it's just like, let's try and find a color palette that feels consistent.
Wise.
And so I sent them the album cover, and I was like, maybe we could derive like a color palette from this. There's a bunch of different colors. It's like a sort of golden sunset, but with with a blue sky kind of thing. And I was like, maybe, it's warm neutrals, is that our look? And everybody, like, can you just feel like you're yourself, but try and find something within here. But another brand I would love to shout out is Shades of Grey by Micah Cohen. Do you know that?
Oh,
it's a menswear company.
Yeah. Been around for a while.
Yeah.
Different iterations as well.
Yeah. And I think they're great. I feel like it's hard for me to go into the store and come out empty-handed. Like usually the struggle is to not buy too much. But that's been like a staple in my over the years as they've evolved and stuff like that. So has my my wardrobe, because I just keep getting stuff from them all the time.
Well, you're obviously familiar with eBay and Etsy and stuff. I don't know how much you ever dig into vintage.
I mean, this is vintage.
Oh, it is?
That's beautiful. It's very, I don't know what era it's from, but it's like vintage Banana Republic from, I think maybe like the early 80s.
Oh shit. That's very early.
Yeah. I mean,
pre-Dawson fit.
Based on the label, it's like, can you see the...
Oh, yeah.
Many iterations of the logo ago.
Yeah.
But again, like, because Lindsay, my wife, is always doing research for her own stuff and also just loves clothes. Her radar is much more sensitive than mine. And so she will find stuff. She found this at, I think one of the vintage markets in LA, might have been Pickwick or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've been the beneficiary of her being like, I found this and now it's in your closet.
I'm the inverse with my wife, where it's like, I found this badass Phantom of the Opera tee.
Yeah.
She's like, okay. And some of these things, like being in St. Louis, there's a lot of Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, Budweiser stuff, as it's the headquarters here.
Yeah.
And she's been sober for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so, but she still loves, an old beat up sort of like Budweiser or whatever shirt. And so there's like stuff like that I'll find. But yeah, I mean, the vintage in LA is probably the best in the world. I mean,
yeah,
it's so good.
There was one time we were at a store here called Sister Wife.
I know
that's
Sister
really
Wife.
cool. Sister Wife, and when I get to find stuff for Lindsay, I feel very, very proud when I'm like, I think this would be cool and I think you would like it. And it actually works, and she'll take it. But we were in there one time, and we walked in, and like I immediately went to this coat, this like beautiful brown sort of like wool tweedish kind of long coat. And I picked it up. I was like, "This is gorgeous." There was no label in it, and it wasn't too expensive, and it looked like it would be her size. And I was like, "Hey, do you want to try this on?" And she did, and it looked great. And I was like, "This is fantastic." And so we went to go get it, and the woman who owns Sister Wife was like, "Hey, great choice. This was a production sample from Bottega Veneta." And the label is off, and
oh boy,
I think the person who sold it like had got, I don't know, it was some amazing find, and yeah, and she wore that, and I get every time she puts it on, I get to be like, hey.
Oh, so you got it? Okay,
Oh,
I thought the kicker she was gonna be like, and it's $10,000.
No, it was like $200, I think.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean that checks out. Like that's I mean, good vintage too. I don't know who I was talking to about on the other day. We were doing a pod where I was like, we finally hit the time and era where you can talk about vintage clothing and it's as respected and admired, if not even more so, than whatever brand is putting something out. But I remember you buy some piece from whomever, and then you could kind of, whatever people would say, they'd like finish it off with like something vintage, but it would always be very forgettable. And now more than ever, it's like, I look at vintage stuff first, to be honest with you. And it's still where I would choose to put my money in or support, because a lot of that stuff, it's just not made anymore, or it won't ever get made again. Yeah. Like a Lee 101, which is like the ultimate denim jacket. Those don't exist anymore. Yeah. There's plenty out there, but there's not like new ones. Mm-hmm.
I think Lindsay would completely agree with you, because I think from her experience being in fashion, seeing how much waste there is and how disposable stuff is, she actually does not buy new clothes anymore. Like that's just a rule for her. She will not buy anything that isn't vintage or just pre-owned or something like that. So she only does sort of secondhand retail. And then kind of like she'll wear something for a while, and then she'll do that, and then she'll resell it herself. But I think her instinct is to go to vintage first too. And for me, I just don't feel like I have the constitution for it. Like the hunt, sometimes I'll be like, I really want this. Like I tend to think more like I'm looking for this item, or like to fulfill this need, and then trying to find that thing. It was like trying to find that CD player. I was like, I'm looking for a single disc CD player. Is that so hard to find? I find that like that's the reaction I have. And I'm like, apparently, and you have to either be really, really patient and investigate all the corners, like I did to eventually find that thing on Etsy, or, and I think this is the better way of being that I'm not capable of, you just have to be open to what comes your way. And even if it's not like, oh, I had a slot for that, you have to be like delighted and surprised by the circumstances that brought you to that item, that let you cross paths with that thing, and then be like, yeah, cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's also one thing that helps is to buy stuff in person. Right. Where, I mean, even you're talking to a person who essentially has to block eBay from his phone after 10:30 at night. Like, it's not a joke. Like I do the focus modes. Right. And the apps that I block is like eBay.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh, that's cool. This looks like a good deal. I'm just going to get, and they're like, why the fuck did I buy some weird hoodie with some random ass school that like, it's like, oh, I had to have it. Yeah. It's like, but if you go in person,
right. Then you might have an actual interaction, like something might actually speak to you emotionally.
Yeah. Also, sometimes if you're buying vintage online, some people, they don't launder it, and you get it and you're like, this smells like an old boot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to hit that OxyClean hard, man.
That's an important part of the in-person experience. Yeah.
It is. Because some of these things you're like, oh, no wonder this, old t-shirt was $11. Because it sat in Grandpa Pigeon's, footstool. Like, it's bad.
Grandpa Pigeon's footstool. Your new band.
That is my punk rock band, where we're currently on hiatus right now due to two of the members. They've just had some issues. We had both of them played bass. They auditioned each person each night on who was going to play bass. We had a 7-string bass player, of course,
Of
and a
course.
5-string.
Yeah.
He does put backup for Korn when they're on tour. Which, by the way, somehow Korn's album like came on my. So I have like a radio thing that I'll just put on in the house in time.
Mhm.
And Korn's "Got the Life" came on, and God, it's a great song. It's a great fucking song. I feel so embarrassed for every 90s band or early aughts band that I completely just crapped on. And lately I've been hearing some of this music and I'm like, this is really good.
Yeah.
It's not for me. I'm not going to turn into some Korn apologist, but man, that song really slaps. It's a great song.
All right.
Everyone mixed their drums the wrong way though.
Yeah.
No piccolo snares, please.
Yeah. Everybody mixed their drums to sound great, ripping through a Guitar Center.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much for the great conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Check out Hrishikesh's new record, In the Last Hour of Light, available now, and catch him on the road this spring. By the way, this is the instrumental of Stray Dogs, which he very kindly sent over. So good, right? But you can listen to the full song in the show notes. I'll put a link there. Also, tune into his podcast, Song Exploder, if you haven't already. Last but not least, our show is produced by Blammo Media. We're edited by Amar Lal, and I am Jeremy Kirkland. Thanks so much, everybody. See you soon.